After weeks of intense negotiations, senators say that they reached a bipartisan agreement on gun legislation. Lawmakers made the announcement over the weekend amid massive protests nationwide. Activists and survivors of gun violence demanded some kind of action from Congress. Nikole Killion is following all of this for us from Capitol Hill. Nikole.
Hey, good morning to you, Anne Marie. And these could be the first major federal gun restrictions in nearly 30 years. President Biden has indicated he would sign the package if it comes to his desk, but no one is taking a victory lap just yet. The legislation hasn't even been written, so this is still very much in the early stages.
I will put this bill on the floor ASAP, as soon as possible.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer pledged action after a bipartisan group of senators announced a framework on gun safety after weeks of negotiations in the wake of the Buffalo and Uvalde massacres.
To deliver literally nothing again was just too hard a prospect to contemplate.
The agreement in principle would include financial support for states to create or administer red flag laws to temporarily remove guns from individuals deemed to be a threat, expanded investments in mental health, school safety, and enhanced background checks for gun buyers.
It is far from everything I wanted, but it will save lives.
At least 10 Republicans have already signed on to the proposals, increasing their prospects for passage. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he hopes negotiations continue to yield a bipartisan product that makes significant headway. But the National Rifle Association warned the NRA will continue to oppose any effort to insert gun control policies that deprive law-abiding citizens of their fundamental right to protect themselves. No more silence in gun violence. Gun safety advocates rallying in the nation's capital and cities around the country say they'll take what they can get.
If we can stop one partisan from happening because of this, that's good.
Well, Congress is only in session for a few more weeks before its July 4th recess, although many lawmakers I've spoken to, Anne Marie, tell me they really hope they can get this done before the break.
Yeah, that would be nice. So with those 10 Republicans on board, though, the final proposal could potentially garner the 60 votes that's needed to overcome a filibuster. But, you know, Republicans have traditionally said no to pretty much any kind of legislation around gun reform. And so I got to wonder whether or not these 10 Republicans are assuming a tremendous amount of political risk going forward with this.
Well, I think it remains to be seen. I mean, I think there's risk the other way, right? I mean, you heard Senator Chris Coons saying, you know, not doing anything. He didn't really see that as being an option given the gravity of some of these mass shootings that we have seen as of late. And so, you know, they didn't want to come up empty yet again. But that being said, as I mentioned, you know, this is, again, very much in the early stages. So while we have this broad framework, certainly things could potentially change. You know, in terms of political risk, I doubt that any of these 10 lawmakers will perhaps face, for instance, the same fate of a Congressman Jacobs, you know, from New York, who, of course, decided not to run for re-election after he announced support for an assault weapons ban. So, I mean, these are very modest changes, modest proposals. Some of them have even been around for several years now. A lot of these lawmakers, you know, have pretty solid ratings with the NRA. So whether or not that changes, I think, depends ultimately on, you know, what finally comes out of this package.
So the president said there's a lot of what he likes in there, but some of what he wanted is not included. What's not included?
So there are a couple of things. I mean, look, you just saw last week the House passed a pretty sweeping package of reforms. And so, for instance, one of the things they passed that's not included in this Senate compromise is, you know, raising the purchasing age for semi-automatic weapons from 18 to 21. As you know, President Biden has called for an assault weapons ban, you know, bringing back the assault weapons ban that we saw back in 1994. And then, of course, you know, things like universal background checks. There's a bill sitting in the Senate now that the House passed over that right now appears to be stalled. So again, you know, many Democrats have acknowledged in this agreement they're not going to get everything that they want out of this, and Republicans as well, but they acknowledge something in this case is better than nothing.
And included in the proposal is a provision that would extend a prohibition on domestic abusers having guns. What more can you tell us about what they're calling the boyfriend loophole?
Yeah, so this would close that so-called boyfriend loophole. This was actually a provision that got struck from another package, the Violence Against Women Act, which was re-upped a couple of months ago, and that was one of the sticking points in terms of getting that particular piece of legislation reauthorized. It was held up actually for a period of years over this back and forth over the boyfriend loophole, and so now we see it as a part of this package, which in essence, again, would make those who are involved in an intimate or romantic relationship with someone ineligible to get a gun if, for instance, they've been convicted of domestic violence abuses. And that is in addition to, for instance, spouses, live-in partners, and the like. So again, as these negotiations continue and as this legislation is drafted, it will be interesting to see if this particular provision actually does stay in, again, given kind of the back and forth when lawmakers tried to include it in previous legislation. So we'll see. Anne Marie.
All right, Nikole, thank you.
You bet.